Hi there. I don't really have an inspiration to speak per se, and I try not to do a video unless the Lord really gives me a flow or an utterance or some kind of thing. I have suspended the Revelation study because we're so close to the Revelation 6 stuff and to me it's quite complex. And I. I just feel like I've had zero desire to go into it. Um, but I do believe that the Revelation uh, messages I did give were unique and refreshing, and they focused on the church age, which is what we're still in. Um, I want you guys to know that I am, I'm thinking about my subscribers and thinking, Lord, why? What would you have me say if there's anything? And I really have felt a peace about just not saying anything. But I've been posting my Romans 5 through 8 messages. I'm kind of, the real milk and meat of the word um, is what we always need. At any time, that's what we need. That's what feeds our spirit and nourishes us and strengthens us to stand. Uh, you know, s- s- Sensational things come and go, but the Word of God will never not nourish you. And sometimes you think that because of the season we're in, what we need is something about this or that. But really, the nourishing Word is what we need at any given point. We need to just be in the milk and the meat of the Word. And really, the milk and the meat are not that different. The milk is seeing Christ as your peace with God and your entrance into the grace of God. And then the meat is seeing Christ as everything for the Christian life. He is the means for carrying out the Christian life. He is the method. So as we grow into meat, we really see that all the other methods and means that we would want to gravitate towards in our natural man don't work for sustaining the spiritual life. It's a person. It's really this person who has been supplied to us as food and drink to become our nourishment. And he is our new and living way. And he is our shepherd. And he really has to do everything. Me is just coming to the realization that what I received in the beginning is what will sustain me to the end. I don't need anything but him. Meat is where the word comes in as the sword to divide between soul and spirit, to divide between the dead works in the holy place and what it really means to serve the living God in the holiest of all, which is actually just to rest in him and learn to trust him. We are converted to become his little children who who can say, I can do nothing and I have nothing and nothing is required of me. Christ is my sufficiency. Christ is everything. And so, again, what we need at any time is the Word of Christ, the nourishing milk and meat of the Word. And I think it's interesting that, like, Romans 5, for example, Romans 5 through 8, I spent years in it, and it's really the heart of the Christian life. It unlocks everything. And yet there's such a dearth of teaching on it. There's so little solid food about those chapters from ministries. Um, but what's interesting is that these are like that. This patch is the best messages I've ever given, where it's like I listen to it objectively and I go, my goodness, that was a flow of the Spirit. Like, that's just living water. Even I try to listen to it objectively as if I'm not the one who spoke it, And I go, man, that fed me. And I go, I can't speak like that again. That was a special thing. I can't do that. That was the Lord. And yet those videos will get the lowest hits. But if I were to do something sensational, it would get 600 or 700 hits, right? And that to me is really sad. And I was thinking about how, the children of Israel were sick of the manna, and they started to complain in the wilderness. And the Lord said, "Oh, you want quail? I'll give you so much quail to be coming out of your eyes, you'll be vomiting it." And they were eating that quail, and they even died. He sent them so much quail as a judgment. I mean, they needed the quail, but their appetite for something other than the manna really put them in a position. They said, why'd you bring us out here to die? Oh, that we could have the leeks and the onions like we did in Egypt, And he's like, okay, I'll give you so much quail you can't even take it. And he said, because you despise the Lord in your midst. He equated himself with the manna. It's really interesting because the manna just seems so plain and so nondescript and so, what is it, And yet it was really their nourishment. And we know that the manna was a picture of Christ. Christ did not say, he didn't liken himself to quail in John 6. He likened himself to the bread from heaven, the manna, that if we eat of him, we'll never perish. We have to eat and drink Christ. And yet our appetite causes us to hunger for so many other things. We clamor for other things. And when there's times of judgment, sometimes there's a time of famine as well for the word. We just came from the 80s to the 2000s, it seems like there was a famine for the real nourishing word in churches. We came out of the institutional churches because of the famine there. So we just need the word. We need to be feeding on Christ. Even though the whole world is shutting down around us, our nourishment is Christ. Nothing changes for us internally as far as what is our food, what is our life, what is our strength. It's Christ himself as the living word who said, the flesh profits nothing. My word is spirit and life. So I just encourage you. I've been reading John today. I'm going to read the Gospels because it's amazing. We have our eyes on the glorious Christ who is coming. And we are to be looking up for him. Don't get me wrong. We are looking up. But when the more glorious he seems, because we're looking for his appearing, right? Right now, we are looking for shock and awe in a way, because we're about to get out of here. It's that much more amazing to go back and read the Gospels. I'm reading John 11 today. And that's the chapter where Jesus, Mary and Martha sent for him because Lazarus was sick. And Jesus, because he loved them, waited 2 extra days to make sure he was dead by the time he got there. It says it's because he loved them, because he wanted to do something for them, that they would see his glory in a special way. And you just see his care and his love. He wept for Lazarus. And then in the next scene in John 12, he's eating with them. And Martha's serving, and Mary anoints his feet with oil. And he says, she did this for my burial. And every scene is so sweet. And he times everything perfectly to bring the people around him through a process where he becomes their food and their focus and their drink, not because he's a megalomaniac and he wants them focused on him because they shouldn't be focused on something else, but because he is the nourishment. It is the way he provides himself, is by dashing expectations sometimes. They said, if you'd have come earlier, my brother would have been alive. Why did you do this? They expected a miracle. Oh, they got a miracle, but it was beyond anything they expected. And I was thinking, again and again in the Gospels, you see him coming in at the last minute where human hope seems to fail, where hope in other things fails, and then he reaches out and touches somebody, right? Like Peter on the water starts to look around and he starts to fall, and then Jesus grabs him and immediately he's in the boat, or the storm comes and Jesus is asleep, and they're like, where, they wake him up and he calms the storm, and then immediately they're at their destination. There's a whole bunch of that kind of stuff where everything Jesus does is not for himself, but is designed to bring his people through a process where their focus gets back on him and they see that he is everything. He is their nourishment. He is their food. He is their drink. And as long as they have him, everything is okay. If they die, they shall live, and if they live, they never shall die, he says in John 10, John 11. I mean, we have to realize we have a present Christ, a present Jesus who loves us, and he is not just on the throne looking down on us in a distant way. He is intimately in our midst to bring us through a process to bring himself into us and bring us into himself. It's what he's doing. It's much more intimate than we want. We want, just get me out of here, and he's going to. But there's a process going on, and we can enjoy him in that process. We can be at peace in the midst of all this storm, and he wants his church to know where their food is, And so I just encourage you guys to be in the Word. Don't go to the Word trying to get an answer about the coronavirus and all that stuff. Like I said, I'm staying away from Revelation 6 right now in my study. I stopped at Revelation 5. That's just me. But go to the Word to find Christ and be nourished by him. The signs and the wonders and the dreams and the visions and the clock, struck at the same time the bird made a noise, and I got a text at the same time, and I looked and it said 11:11 and then 3:11, and that means that stuff does not feed you. That does not feed you. That is not nourishment. That is not the milk and meat of the Word. And we've had the famine for the Word for so long in the churches, and it's because the Word gets eclipsed by other things that are not essential. In the institutional church, it's the programs and it's everything but the nourishment of the Word. But we could do the same thing on YouTube. We could just spin out, we could get, like me, I spent the whole day on YouTube yesterday watching videos about the corona thing. Why? What is different? Just because the world is falling apart around me, internally my focus still has to be Christ is my food and drink. I'm speaking to myself too, believe me, I do pay attention to some of the dreams where, okay, this might be this and that, I do. But what we don't want it to be is like God sends, okay, you want all that quail? Here's so much, you're not even going to be able to take it anymore, So I strongly recommend, if you can get some time today, to spend some time in the Gospels and look at this Jesus who we're dealing with. Realize that the glorious Christ who's coming to get you is the Jesus in the gospel who so cares for you and your inward state and what you're feeling and how your heart is towards him because he loves you. This is a little scattered, but I'm going to just post it up, and this is sort of my hello for today.